Going into the review for Fresh Pretty Cure, the movie, The Toy Kingdom Has Lots of Secrets, I thought I was going to be a lot more pessimistic about what I saw in the film. I didn't remember liking it very much. From my initial thoughts from writing all of that down, I didn't seem to enjoy it very much. But when I went and rewatched it, I think I liked it more than I originally did. Which isn't to say I disliked it originally, but I just didn't think that it was anything particularly special. It doesn't stand out to me amongst the other Pretty Cure movies that I have watched thus far and have watched since this one. But I did rewatch it yesterday to refresh myself and to come into it with a little bit more accuracy in what I wanted to say about it. And I liked it a pretty good amount. The best part of the film is probably before they actually try to get into the plot of the Pretty Cure film, when it is just them goofing around and having a good time and exploring a little bit. That is the best part of the film, I think. The comedy is pretty good off the rip. I think it is pretty entertaining and funny, and they have some good goofs in there. Kaoru is still the goat. I think it's incredibly funny that at one point they run off and then the movie just has a still shot on his face for like 10 seconds of silence and then just his goofy laugh immediately after is immensely entertaining. That was the shot they decided to go with. And they do a lot of stuff like that in the film that makes me wonder if they were trying to reach a certain time threshold on this film and weren't sure how they were going to get there. Because while a lot of the Pretty Cure films go through the full transformation sequences and full attack sequences for anything they do, this movie did the most in terms of their transformation sequences. I don't think they had a shortened sequence anywhere in the film. I think everything they did for their attacks and transformations was drawn out to be as long as it possibly could. It was incredibly funny seeing it like that, and thinking about that fact while watching the film. But it wasn't bad because I really enjoy the Fresh Pretty Cure transformation sequences and attack sequences, and I think they're pretty good. I have to wonder if these are some of the longest that the show has had, at least up to this point. I feel like they probably are. Just each of them has so many steps they go through on each of their transformation sequences. And their four stack team super attack feels like it's also so incredibly long compared to so many of the others. I have to wonder if that's just kind of the state I watched the film and that was the mental state I was in while watching it. But it wasn't a bad thing. It was just I'm sitting there watching it, and then it keeps going and keeps going, and then they're still throwing the clover to each other, and it keeps going. I'm like, damn, girls, okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, take your time. It's okay. You got all the time you need to beat this bad guy. But I don't know. I just thought the length of the sequences. I should probably go back and time out how long the sequences take because I think it would be incredibly funny to see what percentage of the film is just them doing transformation and attack sequences. But I do think going back to the comedy that it's pretty good. There's a lot of good goofs, especially in the first part of this film. There's uh, them just having pillow fights. They're just having fun, throwing pillows at each other, hitting each other in the face. They goof Buki by when they're playing Old Maid and bait her into taking the Joker card. I think that's Old Maid. I should probably check that. I don't remember what card game is. Um, there's just a scene where Love's dad is playing with Tart and tickling him like he's their pet, which I guess technically to her dad, Tart is just kind of their pet. Just their weird dog, their weird ferret that they found and said, "Yeah, I guess we could keep this incredibly large, suspiciously human-faced rodent." Sounds good to me. And then I guess they do that with Setsuna too. um, but they followed that bit up immediately with them talking about like how Setsuna does like fortune telling. They just kind of stare at each other for a bit and make a noise of surprise but understanding. And I really feel like that might be my favorite goof of the film, because that's kind of how they met in the first place in the show. They met because they wanted to do fortune telling. And they met Setsuna doing fortune telling, and Setsuna's like, I know what I need to do, be a bad guy, because that's what she is at the start of the film. But then they don't really bring up the fortune telling element of her personality much in the rest of it. So it is a little funny when they bring it up here in the movie, having not done it the rest of the time she's been in the show, and then have all the characters be like, "What? Oh, right. I forgot about that." And I have to imagine that their responses are them remembering the method in which they met Setsuna, and then the immediate following events of them all fighting and being on opposing sides before becoming friends once again, which is fine. It was funny. I think that this season has kind of an interesting approach to the identities of the Pretty Cure for the populace, because I feel like this is the first season where they have a public image of the Pretty Cure. The attacks that these bad guys are doing are having maybe not lasting effects, but they are noted by the public. They are impacting the public. People don't just pass out immediately and then forget everything that happened when they wake up, whenever Labyrinth is making their attacks on the population. They are being hurt or almost hurt. Usually, I don't think anybody gets hurt. That's fine. It's a children's show, whatever, man. But they're still knowing that these events are happening, even if they do literally nothing about it. And they address that in a small way in this film, where when the children's toys start disappearing, Love is talking to a child at the toy shop, and she's like, "Don't worry, I'm sure the Pretty Cure will bring your toys back. They're the best. They're the greatest of all time. Absolute cinema. Pretty Cure numero uno compayo del mundo." Um, so it's a little funny being reminded that the Pretty Cure have a public image, but their identities are secret. And there was something about the interaction there that made me feel very much like it was sort of a very Common Rider type scene. I know magical girl genre and Masked Rider Super Sentai genres are like, the Venn diagram on those is almost a circle. But it was just kind of fun seeing a little reminder about how similar they are in a small way. Or maybe that's just my brain making a weird connection between them. There's something about the Pretty Cure going, "Don't worry, the Pretty Cure will help you," but she's secretly a Pretty Cure. She's not actually revealing her identity. She's just being supportive to reassure the population. There's just something fun about that. But it's not like they need to hide their identities for long, because they pretty much immediately get to go to the Kingdom of Toys. And once they are there, they're in the Toyland. They're talking all these funny little fairy get type guys. So they don't need to worry about hiding their identities as Pretty Cure. Mostly also because when they get introduced to traveling there, it is Love's old plushie, Usapion, who is like, "Yeah, I know you guys are Pretty Cure, because I've been living in your closet for like 7 years," and telling them, "Hey, we're gonna go to the Toy Kingdom, and we're gonna try to set things right in the Toy Kingdom." But I think that other than the fights, once they get to the Toy Kingdom, that is where the film isn't as fun for me. There is still stuff to like once they actually get into the meat of the film, because all of them have very cool fights, some of them cooler than others. I think Pine kind of gets not as fun a fight. She's just kind of running around away from a dinosaur and then knocks a thorn out of its leg, I guess. But Barry gets kind of a cool asteroids looking Galaga looking chase sequence. She gets to fly a little spaceship around and then punch a hole in the enemy spaceship. Passion has just a really cool fight against the chess pieces and trashes all of the chess pieces except the king, and then probably has maybe not her coolest fight in the whole season, but one of them, it's up there for sure, using her teleportation ability to just immediately avoid any attack this guy throws at her and then doing it rapidly in succession to actively fight him while avoiding attacks was such a fun use of her teleportation powers that we really don't get a lot of the time. And I thought that was just a really cool sequence for her to get in the film, especially. And then the entire martial arts film setup of Peach's fight was killer. It was top notch. And it was also really cool for showcasing the fresh girls are always ready to throw hands. They're not that the other seasons aren't ready to throw down and throw hands, but they aren't always immediately going to hand fisticuff violence. Now, the fresh girls, on the other hand, they're loud and a little bit more brash than some of our previous girls, except for maybe like our more sportier types. But they're ready to go, and Peach is no slouch when it comes to martial arts. Apparently, she is a trained martial artist and goes ham on the action figure that she is fighting, and just kind of a really cool sequence. I do think that it's kind of funny moving a little bit more closer to their conclusion in the film. Um, Usoppon, Love's plushie, is summoned to Toei Majin's castle and is like, "Oh, Usoppon, you've betrayed me and my hatred." And Usoppon's like, no, actually I didn't, and we're not so different, you and I." It's a little funny seeing one of the good guys do that to the bad guy rather than the other way around like it normally is. Um, which is also doubly funny for me because I literally just watched a friend finish Final Fantasy 16, and something very similar to that happens there, which is pretty entertaining. That's not a connection I initially thought I would be drawing between Fresh Pretty Cure movie and especially the toy little bunny plushie and Clive Final Fantasy, his actual given name. But I thought it was kind of fun, but I also think that they didn't do a whole lot with it because they kind of seem to. I guess they, at the very end of the film, illustrate that yes, they weren't so different because Toei Majin in his original form was a toy who was loved by kids and is like, oh yeah, I'll go back to my ways of loving and believing in children and their love of toys. But I feel like the process of getting there was a little melodramatic because it is Peach seeing Usopp inside of Toei Majin's body and crying about that, and they almost don't get to do their big dramatic finisher attack because she is so distraught over this that she cannot actually function in the fight. But I don't know. It kind of felt like the sequence was very melodramatic. This felt like the most. I know they're all children's films. That is not lost on me. But this felt like the most outright children's film out of all of these children's films. And I don't exactly know what element of that it is. I think it's a combination of the focus on childhood toys and the children losing their toys, and the really funny sequence earlier in the film where there is happy, upbeat music playing because our girls are having a fun time together, and then also hard cutting to children crying in a toy store with the same happy, upbeat music playing in the background. But it just drives home that idea when Love or Peach is collapsed on the ground sobbing because she didn't love her toys good enough, I guess. And they snap her out of it and they get to do their cool big finisher. But they do that with one of my least favorite tropes in basically anything, where they slap her face while she is having a little bit of a meltdown freak out to snap her out of it. I just I see that and I think about what would happen if somebody did that to me, and it is not a very pleasant thought. It does not inspire any sort of positive emotions in me. And I just don't like that trope. I don't think it's a good way to do anything. I understand that it serves its purpose of getting the character shocked out of whatever sort of spiral they are in. And that sort of negative spiral is something that is incredibly dangerous to go through, even if you're not a magical girl sobbing over a toy that she may or may not have actually cared for. But doing such a thing as slapping them in the face to get them out of that just seems like such an unnecessarily aggressive act that I just don't really care for. I don't think I've ever liked it when they've done that. There is one instance of that trope that I have liked, and it is Gurren Lagann, peak of all time, Kamina punching Simone out of his stupor. That is, I think, maybe the only time I've ever liked that trope. And Barry does that to Peach in this film. She slaps her to knock her out of it. It's like, oh, you're not Love right now. You're Cure Peach. And Pretty Cure are supposed to help everybody. And what are you going to do about that, Peach? And I do like that reminder of you may be sad about what you think you have or haven't done, but as a Pretty Cure, you have a responsibility to undertake these actions that you've said you're going to do to help people. So you need to do this and fulfill the promise you made, and then you can think about your actions and reflect and repent after the fact. There will be time for that after, because he is kind of trying to kill them. So if they die, they don't have time to do that. I do think it's kind of cool that Toei Majin survives their big old finisher cool attack. They do beat him, but his hate is so strong that it brings him back from beyond the grave. And then it gets into another part of the film that I don't care for, where at the beginning of the film, when they're like, oh, hey, we're looking for Toei Majin, all of the toys around the city hide, they run, they are afraid, they're scared, they do not want anything to do with the Pretty Cure because they are mentioning Toei Majin. Nobody wants to have anything to do with that guy. But then here in the film, Toei Majin, having been ripped apart and blown into the sky, turns to the town and is like, hey, all you toys who are abandoned, give me your power, give me your hatred. We have to kill the Pretty Cure and then exact our revenge. And I have to hope that the energy waves exuding from the sky are just magic that is being used to control them emotionally. Because, and it doesn't seem like it based on a little bit later in the film, but I have to hope that it is that, because otherwise it's a really annoying sequence where all of these toys who were happy, fun, having a good time, happy to talk to the humans who were walking around, all of a sudden just heel turn. Actually, we do hate children. I'm glad we're going to destroy them. You know, the ones that we hung out with earlier and we're fine with and we're like smile happy, having a good time talking to them. Yeah, we do need to kill them. And then all children, I think that's a good idea. It was just kind of obnoxious. I didn't really care for that. And I can't fully assume that it is magic possessing or controlling them, because when they are all pulled into Toy Majin's body, the all of the toys are saying the same thing again. They're like, "Oh yeah, no, I was abandoned like this, and I was abandoned like this," and they are giving specific examples of what happened to them and why they dislike children. Like, there's not, I don't know. I don't care for the sudden dramatic turn, and then also the CG monster was kind of goofy. The CG in the film wasn't bad overall. I think the final form Toy Majin is probably the worst of it, but the Pretty Cure's CG is fine, and the rest of the stuff is okay. The Whenever it's not just a wide shot of Toy Majin, I think the CG is fine. But when it's those big ol' open wide shots, it's not as good. The Whenever he's attacking them, it's fine, and all of that, it's cool. I do like that they sort of blended the CG 3D and 2D sections, where the Pretty Cure fighting him were 3D for a lot of that fight, like a significant amount, surprising. I guess just since they finally started using the 3D with this season, they wanted to really get their money's worth out of it. And it was probably easier to render that, but I have to imagine that this was coming out around a time where CG in anime was becoming cheaper and more popular as a result, and so they just utilized it there, which is fine. That's totally understandable, perfectly reasonable way to go about it too. But once Love loses her transformation, she's no longer 3D. She is 2D again, probably because they didn't want to make an entire model for her while not transformed, which makes sense. But it kind of makes for a cool difference between how she is visually when she is just sprinting up the arm of this big old monster so she can find her plushie. And then she does, and then they win because she gets a big power up from Chiffon and gets to turn into Cure Angel, which I think is one of the cooler power ups we've seen. It's a very fun sequence. I like her design so much. Cure Angel has such a pretty design. And she shoots a big ol' heart beam at the monster and it explodes. And that's it. I'm so disappointed that we didn't get to see Cure Angel for longer, or have her do literally anything other than show up and defeat the bad guy. And I think a little bit of that is made up later in the actual TV show, because they all get a Cure Angel type transformation deep into when they are fighting the final boss of Labyrinth. But in the movie, they could have done anything with it. They could have done anything with the Cure Angel transformation, and it would have been cooler than just her showing up and shooting a heart at Toy Majin, and then that's it. That's the end of it. They beat him. Don't worry, guys. We purified all the toys. And they do win, and they do bring all the toys back to the children, and all the children are happy and having a good time because their toys are back, and they no longer feel insane for having their toys disappear in front of their very eyes. But overall, I liked this film, but I don't know. It's difficult to say, because I enjoyed this film, but I don't think it did a lot. I liked a lot of what it did do, but I felt like it kind of just meandered towards the fight. And then once they got to the fight, they were kind of cruising. Like, it was a long fight sequence, but first part of the film, really fun. I think it's really funny that the least Pretty Cure part of the film is the one I liked the most, or the part of it I liked the most. I don't know what that says about this film as a whole, but it was okay. I don't. I would hesitate to rate it now, because I don't want to be like, oh, I hated it. It was so bad. But I feel like it is kind of a 5 out of 10 film. It's definitely not a bad one. It's still fun to watch. It's still a decent watch. It's still enjoyable as a movie, but it just doesn't feel as fun, I think, as it could have, especially compared to kind of how much I liked Fresh Pretty Cure as a whole. The movie is just okay, but I don't know. Maybe they were still trying to figure out how they wanted to do the movies, doing two of them per season. Oh, and the fourth wall breaks were kind of also a really good part of this film because they do the fourth wall break at the beginning to explain to the audience what you should and shouldn't do with the miracle lights. I don't remember them calling them miracle lights in this film. Maybe I just missed that part. But then having their actual baby chiffon give good demonstrations of what you shouldn't do with it, and then the fourth wall breaks when Peach Love directly asks the audience to help give Pretty Cure power so they could beat the bad guys. The direct mentioning of the audience by the character rather than by one of the mascots was a little bit surprising and kind of funny. And then it's definitely cheesy and goofy, all the hearts appearing in the sky around them, but I'll be damned if that moment wouldn't have hit so hard being like 12 in a darkened theater with a bunch of other people holding toy light up wands and then doing the same thing to help your favorite anime girl on screen beat the bad guy. I bet that moment would have gone so hard. That would have been so cool. And then the CG dance sequence at the end, and another fourth wall break. The characters are like, "Hey, get up and dance, kids. Have some fun with it. Adults, stay in your place. Don't get up, or the children can't see. Please sit down. Everybody on the second floor, if this theater has one, also don't get up, please. But have fun, everybody." That was kind of fun, kind of neat. But yeah, that's it